All right, we're back. So, it's all about technology these days, and hopefully you guys can let us know if you can hear us a little bit better. But we had just bad Wi-Fi going on here. So here we are, Jamie Munro and Jerry Byrne, back again, trying to do a Facebook Live. A couple of older guys, a Levittown guy and a guy from Providence, Rhode Island. Pretty much just talking about V-Holds, talking about the Who concert. Talking about that I'm going through tonight. We're going to the Billy Joel concert tomorrow night. Jerry's got his Camaro parked in front, and we're just talking about Harvard lacrosse and how a Levittown guy ends up as the head lacrosse coach at Notre Dame. Kind of made sense, being that you're a Chaminade guy, but now you're here at Harvard, and you're building a culture, you're building a program, you got an unbelievable staff. So just give us a little bit of a rundown on what you're up to.
We are full on 2020 recruiting, still working on that. So for the guys who started their rising senior year a few weeks ago, September 1st just came and went. So there's a lot of activity and effort around that. Most of what we've been doing is around all of us, the staff, our new staff, Coach Hutchinson, Coach Corrigan, Coach Littell, Coach Bergman, Coach Looney, all of us developing a deep understanding as quickly as possible about Harvard and being able to articulate what's unique about it, because it really is different than any other place. And
it's more than just the kids are wicked smart.
They are wicked smart, but we want to make them wicked smart lacrosse players at the same time. And so that's an initial investment in time, and then obviously getting to know our existing players and the incoming group of 7 players and the returning group of 33 players, 32 players. And so that's a big effort, focusing on the guys that we have here now, while at the same time getting our outbound messages to high school and club coaches and the high school and club players that the kind of student we're looking for, the kind of people we're looking for, the kind of players that we're looking for. And obviously the message to Harvard, because of its place in our society, resonates with a high percentage of the really driven players and athletes. So we've gotten great response to the 2020s all summer, but also with the new 2021s that we're allowed to talk to now.
Awesome. So you were just mentioning your staff. Coach Hutchinson, you brought him over from Notre Dame. It's his first chance at running the side of the ball. How excited are you to have him, and how excited is he to be able to actually run a side of the ball for the first time?
I mean, Neil is a passionate coach, a very curious. He's goal-oriented. He really cares about developing the person and the player simultaneously, and does a great job of explaining not just the technique of the things that we're trying to teach, but also what's the impact of doing it right and wrong, which I really believe in, and is a big part of how I teach defense. So he's got that kind of fund of knowledge because of his career at UMBC and Towson and Notre Dame. Having Will Corrigan with us, working with the offense and the face-off guys as well. Will, I coached Will for 4 years. I've known him since he was born. He's a coach's son, so he brings the love of the game, a heritage of coaching through his father and his grandfather and uncles and cousins who've all played the game. So he loves the game, and he brings a really positive energy and hunger to connect as well. And then we have Ted Bergman, who came from Cleveland State, was a first-team All-American goalie at Wesleyan. So he's bringing that technique and that focus around connecting with goalies, not trying to reform them, but working on these little elements of their game to improve their saving and clearing and their understanding of our defense. And then we have Coach Littell, who's been a coach and an ops director here. He's got a great fund of knowledge relative to understanding Harvard. And then Steve Looney from Navy, who's at the Kennedy School of Government for the next year. He's working with our culture development and leadership. So I think we're pretty fortunate to have these young, hungry, inquisitive, and creative guys supporting our staff right now.
Totally. I love your staff. Will Corrigan, I've known Kevin for a long time, and his son Will, who's now on your staff, came out and was an intern for me at 3D Lacrosse back in the day. And I spent a summer hanging out with Will Corrigan. I knew right then he was going to be a coach and going to be a great coach. Just a great personality and a great combination of sort of toughness and just good guy. He's mellow and intense all at the same time.
Yeah.
And as on board as you could possibly be. I mean, that guy's on board. Ted Bergman, I really don't know that well, but I got to know him last year when he came on the Virtual Lacrosse Summit. And if you guys haven't seen his webinar he did on goaltending, it's awesome. And he is just mature and articulate beyond his years. And so, I mean, just overall, Coach Littell, met him with the previous staff. Great dude. I've never met Coach Looney, but I heard great things last night from my boy Graham Blake. He was telling some, recounting some things, and some really cool stuff.
And Steve, is connected to this, unbelievable family in Annapolis, and their service to our country and belief in our values and, the sacrifice that he's making in defending our country. And he's just bringing kind of a sense of humility and appreciation for everything that we have. And then you overlay the fact that our guys are at Harvard, and he came and spoke to our team on September 11th, which and we're all posting and saying thank you to all the people who protect and serve our country. But I think Steve helped humanize that. He went for what he thought was going to be a 13-mile run, decided to go for a 1 mile more, and he shared that with our guys. He talked about why he did it, and he talked about the meaning of that day. And more than anything else, I think that happened that day, because we had a practice and a lift, I think our guys walked away from that 10-minute presentation, maybe not even 10 minutes, 5 minutes of just raw emotion and honesty that wasn't scripted. And that was just a great day. If we got nothing else out of that day but the positivity of his message, then his impact on our program has been immense so far.
Oh, no doubt. And how to call yourself out.
And how to call yourself out. How to be the hardest judge of yourself.
Exactly. We were talking about this last night at dinner. We had an awesome dinner at Toscano's with Matt Rowley and Dave Jenkins, and we really had just a great time talking about a lot of different stuff. But one of the things I said to Jerry, I was like, you what's it like having a whole crew of kids that don't actually know your defensive system? I mean, you were able to, after a while, have guys that, like you said, 75% of them knew the terminologies, knew the techniques, knew the drills. Of course, it's always evolving. And what you said that was so interesting was that you found out like 3 or 4 years ago that your team would actually have its own little, almost like pre-practice course where they would like tell all the freshmen and the rookies, hey, you need to know this, and if you do this, you're probably going to get yelled at, and you got to make sure. And so, all in all, what's it like?
Not probably, definitely,
yeah. But what's it? It's got to be really refreshing though to try to introduce all this new stuff to a new group.
No doubt, and I think much like all those years ago, you have to find guys on your team that pick up things quickly. So, because they're all not going to learn at the exact same time. And this is true whether you're a high school coach or a youth coach. And if you're a parent, you definitely know that. Some of your kids pick up the rules and the expectations and your values quicker than others. So it's the same thing on a team. For some of your children, it takes 10 years for them to get a lesson. Other ones, one time, and they get it. It's the same thing on your team. So we're already figuring out a couple of guys on our team who are picking up the concepts and the nuances of how we want to teach them to play our kind of defense. And so once you get that started, now you can start deputizing them to start teaching the other guys. And you show me a great team and a great culture. As much as the coach knows, it's less about what he knows, it's what your guys can understand and digest. And then are you doing it in a way where they want to talk about it when you're not even around?
How do you deputize a guy?
Listen, part of it is letting him run a drill all by himself. So letting go is a big way to make your team progress. So we've already started introducing some of the drills that we're going to do. And one guy might be further along, like, hey, you got to run that 4-person group. And he doesn't have to be perfect, because part of improvement is the dialogue of imperfection. And so if one guy's a little bit further along, he might get challenged by a classmate or a teammate, but that's also how you grow. And if you have 20 people in your group, and I'm not saying I have 20 people, but if I'm running five groups of 4, I can't manage all of them at the same time. But if I have a guy who's progressed faster and you delegate and give him that leadership, that's going to expedite his growth.
Yeah.
And because he has to talk about these concepts, whether it's how to run a drill or how to communicate or how to make decisions on picks or off ball, if you do that really well, his development's going to speed up. The guys in his group's development's going to speed up. And now your 15 and 20 guys are going to get further along, almost independent of what the head coach or the positional coach is doing. And so you have to accept the level of imperfection, which, that takes a long time. I'm kind of obsessive and I'm kind of a detailed guy. But one of the things I've learned just in the 8 weeks of being in my new role is that you can't control everything, and you have to trust your guys to develop, knowing that there's going to be some mistakes, but that's how you move forward.
And teaching is one of the best ways to learn. Number one, I've always I've spent a lot of time watching you coach and watch you orchestrate. And truthfully, like you said, you can't quality control 4 different groups of 5 or 5 groups of 4, and you have to have guys that do that. And I think that if you can figure out a way to scale that quality control across the upperclassmen and like you've said in the past, hey, sometimes we've had guys that don't even play much for us, but they're so valuable because they quality control everything that we're doing out there.
No doubt. And listen, I know you did your 1 year of your high school team. You went totally full on
Irish defense or burn crimson now.
And so, but that's the only way you're going to progress, because if you have to coach each guy one at a time to the level, you'll never get there. And so, but it really. Somebody's quote, good players become great when no one else is around. It's good players can become really good when your coach is not overbearing every little detail, because the game is not chess that you can't always predict what your opponent's going to do. So you're trying to empower your players with the decision making and the critical thinking that when you're 40 yards away on the sideline, what they know is the most important thing. Your command, your PhD of a drill or a topic is irrelevant at that point. It's what your guys can understand and process and execute. And so just in the first, we've had, a couple of practices. The Ivy League rules are a little bit different. We've been on the field for only a couple hours together and a couple hours in the weight room. But the most critical thing is giving your guys the tools, getting them excited about it, having them understand good versus bad, and the cost and benefit of doing it right versus doing it wrong. If they get that, and they get the impact of, if I do it wrong, is it a selfish decision, or was it, did I do something selfishly and didn't execute well enough? And if I'm doing that, having them really understand the cost of that to the team, that's how you really create great defense, is they start thinking about the 6 and not about the 1. And 1 being themselves or their matchup or something like that. So we've already made great progress. The guys have been unbelievably responsive. We're throwing a lot of stuff at them. We didn't give them a list of terminology or the names of the drills. We just go.
Yeah.
And because you want to Socratically figure out who can learn quickly. And I know that.
So you did not give them a list.
There was no glossary, no terminology, because I think learning by failing in this scenario of falling short or not understanding anything forces guys to talk to each other, forces them to come and ask you a quick question, and now they learn.
They're just learning the language the way you learn language when you're a little kid. You just you don't
pick it up.
You pick it up. You pick it up.
And so, and I know you went and spent a whole season doing the stuff that I believe in, and I think you had a lot of joy in doing that. It was fun.
No doubt, and I honestly, I really think that part of the brilliance is the attention to the detail of these habits. But the other part of the brilliance is getting everybody communicating and leading, because at the end of the day, everybody has to be able to communicate and lead in certain situations. And everybody has to be on the same page. And that's why I really think it's cool. We were talking earlier today actually about how, hey, the Ivy League, we've got a little bit less time. We're trying to use film so that we can save 2 or 3 minutes on an explanation. And I told you that I've been really diving into this concept of the flipped classroom. The traditional classroom model is you get lectured to, you go home, you do your homework, you take tests, and it goes on and on and on. And the flipped classroom is your homework is the video content, it is the lesson. And then you come into class and you do work, oftentimes with groups, in which the teacher can intermix where needed, and you can employ the students to help each other. And that's really exactly what you've been doing all along. and now you're just sort of taking it to another level. And I think it's really cool. And if you're a coach on here, I would urge you to seriously consider trying to figure out a way to use video to teach, because a video can teach better than you can teach. Because we're sitting here talking, and we're trying to explain stuff. It takes longer. They can't stop it.
Right.
They can put their headphones in, go by themselves, rewind it. They don't have to feel stupid if they don't get it on the first time. And then to be able to do what you're doing as far as like allow the kids to begin to take responsibility. It's really cool.
Well, and it also, you think about culture development, this generation isn't necessarily as blunt as our direct, like we didn't triangulate as much. If we had a problem with a guy, we probably went right at him.
Right.
And
if a guy had a big nose, you just call him big nose.
Yeah, it wasn't like, you did not avoid, you did not triangulate things. And so one of the ways and what we're talking about in coaching and developing players is empowering those guys with the expectations, giving them the tools, a clarity of what's good and not good, having them understand the cost and benefits of good versus bad, and them coaching each other, which is a total multiplier and has an exponential effect on your development as a team.
Them coaching each other.
And that like to me, and again, you have to accept as a coach in practice an element of imperfection, right? And that's hard to let go of because you want the drill to be perfect, and but in the game, obviously, you can't always protect the Dodgers' skill or the quality of someone's approach or whether you got ball pressure or not. So that it creates a window of good and really good and what bad looks like. So when you do film and you use film to break down, whether it's using it on some of the software that's out there or on your iPad or whatever it is, now you're taking that learning, the peer-to-peer development, the candor that you're trying to get your players to develop. And one of the ways that candor develops is letting them run drills. And you might have a day, I did this all the time, and I'll do it again this year when we get to a certain level, is I'm going to make this freshman run the drill. And he's got to tell the senior All-American or the senior All-Ivy player and say, I don't want to hear anybody else with the freshman, because I want to understand whether the freshman can communicate in the right tone, with the right tenor, with the right clarity, volume, and specificity that needs for that drill that we're trying to replicate a situation that comes in a game. Because if you can't be loud, you can't play. I always say I'd rather be loud and wrong than quiet and right. And so we have to manufacture, and you have to be comfortable telling a guy in the crucible of a critical possession, can I tell the senior what to do? Because at that time, it's not really about being right or wrong. We just need to try to escape and survive that situation. You don't have time to debate, hey, you're a freshman, you can't tell me what to do. It's binary. You either get to stop or you don't.
Binary. After that, it's a dot or a...
Right? It's a stop or it's not. So, obviously there's nuance within that. So we're trying to get our guys to understand the culture that needs to be developed on both offense and defense, but we either get to stop or we don't. Everything else, having a great check, if you don't pick up the ground ball, who cares? You get a nugget, but you miss the first GB. You get a save, but you don't corral the rebound. Yeah, that's a save, and that's maybe a deflection, or maybe that's almost a turnover. Almost a turnover doesn't count. So you either get to stop or you don't.
No doubt. So I got a question for you.
Yeah.
I feel like you listen to a lot of coaches. I would say younger generation coaches that are PLO guys now, or I'd say guys in their 20s are less inclined to teach and believe in the V-hold. I know you're like a V-hold guy. Why do you think, and I know there's different ways to skin a cat, okay? So, I mean, there's plenty of great defensemen out there that like to cross-check hold on everything and never want to use a V-hold. But why do you think, that is, why is that, and why do you believe in it so much as it's just a critical part of your, one-on-one play?
I mean, I think the short answer, because we addressed this when we talked back in the winter, is I think, having your stick in a disruptive place, it may open you up to maybe having to be slid to more, but as far as taking away hands and eyes and consistent ball pressure, I think the righty on righty V hold and lefty against lefty V hold is a critical thing. and
Ball pressure.
And ball pressure forces the guy, if he wants to get upfield, to run around and through you, and it gives a consistent indicator of the level of how you may be beat or not beat. As far as, and we covered that ad nauseum back in your podcast we did last December.
Totally.
Is the why other people don't do it? I think it's just not taught as much. And it was pretty standard when I was growing up. And I think once it started losing favor, what it became was, this is much more of a natural movement. This is maybe a less natural if you're righty and I'm going righty. This delivers power and strength looks better and it's easier to do. This is a much more natural movement, shoving and pushing someone, because you do this in basketball and you do it in whatever, confrontation you might have in another sport. Football, you're constantly doing this kind of thing. You're not always like this where you're creating the V. So I think the loss, as some of the older coaches went away and younger coaches came in, and whoever started the crosshand hold thing, this was much more about violence, about violent movements, and which can give you only temporary ball pressure in my mind, but much more natural. This is a bench press movement. Yeah. This is a pull movement. This is much more natural, and I think that's why it came. And then as the pro leagues developed, that and this is nothing against the pro leagues, that in general they're outside of the Redwoods pretty average team defense. They put guys out on islands. And when you're on an island, you're not thinking about disruption. You're thinking about ownership and solo custody, where no one's going to come and help. And if you're about solo custody and on an island, you're thinking about violence. You're not thinking about, hey, if I turn this guy, some guy's going to come and support. I might get help.
But I think there's a feeling that, like, if you play a V-hold, you can't actually be in any situation other than having to slide. And I think that, what I'm saying? Like, I think they feel like, well, if I play a V-hold, I'm going to get inside roll on so fast that I don't want to do that because I know they're not coming. Right. And I think... Right.
So you got some ego. There's some ego involved there, too.
But I feel like there's also a misunderstanding of the technique, which is that, if you overrun your V-hold, you're going to get rolled back real quick. But, I mean, if you keep your hips a little bit below the guy while you're playing, you can play almost both sides of them and keep ball pressure on one side. And you're probably actually a little bit more susceptible to a top side in a V-hold than you would be if you were straight up. But you can, with your body and your legs, be in the way of the inside roll. And if you want to slow him down on that, am I wrong? You can do that, right?
No, you can. There's definitely, listen, the work that really good offensive coaches are doing to teach moves when their guys get to the island, whether it's a rocker, bounce and step through, kind of roll away, step through, all the different hesitation moves, not even question marks, just more like check marks. They get up there and they pivot and have it, like Pinell.
Dylan Malloy.
Yeah, Dylan Malloy. So the offensive guys are doing a great job to adapt to the cross-handed hold. My whole thing about the V-hold was, if you have a mindset about support, it should be, how can it be as disruptive and for as long as possible, and even if a guy escapes me, I can deliver that ball pressure and affect his next move. And then giving the on-ball guy is with his stick and his feet is giving an indicator on how much am I beat, am I getting beat, how much do I need to help from an off-ball standpoint.
I love the idea that you use this terminology a lot, that I love and I've stolen, which is capturing someone in your V-hold. And that's such a great way of thinking about it. And, I feel like people just think about driving, and I think it's more about, controlling and capturing than it is about driving. Because I feel like if you try to drive someone, you are going to get spun on very quick.
Right. I talk a lot about, getting greedy. And so when you're covering a guy, is trying to find that range of ball pressure that is, it's not too little, and your head of your stick is not in a disruptive place, but when you're within range, and maybe you're not on a cuff, but you're maybe on an elbow. And so that's bad in its own way, because the guy can, feed and shoot and redodge and do all the things against you. Is if you get greedy, you get a guy into a pretty good spot, and then you got a guy in a V-hold, and next thing you know, he's trying to wrap check him, or if I'm guarding Jamie, maybe I go over his head. Maybe I go over his head in Lake Placid. Maybe there may be some video proof of that. I can't say I did not or did not go over his head like Glass said, but not getting greedy is really important. So trying to find that range of ball pressure that is enough to be disruptive, but not so greedy that you're hunting a takeaway or hunting something else. Because when you get greedy is when you get beat quickly.
Yeah.
And when you get beat quickly, there's no time for your off-ball teammate to see the signals and signs of you about to get beat or giving up an edge. When you get greedy, the offensive guy can read that pressure and escape you before somebody can come and help.
Yeah, I know we've covered some of these topics, but they're so interesting, and there's so many like little nuances that start to show themselves. I mean, isn't it pretty amazing actually, Jerry, that you can like study this stuff and think about it more than as much as any human on the planet, and yet you can still come up with some nuance, something new, something like, holy crap, how did I not think of this in the past? You got anything like that?
I think over the last 2 years, everybody who's maybe listening or watching or coach, is one of the things that you hear college coaches or high school coaches talk about. Like, we got to improve our communication. You're in the huddle. We're not talking. You're in the halftime thing. You guys aren't talking to each other on the clear or the ride or the 6-on-6 and 6-on-6 D is one of the things that we started doing and that we're doing already here at Harvard is forcing our guys and doing drills that require this, that the first thing that we say is your teammate's name. And so that everything that comes after that is very specific and customized for you. And it's really important in offense, obviously. It's really important in everything. But instead of just being noise, where people are yelling and they're saying stuff and pretty valuable stuff, is that my whole mentality is say less, be loud, and be specific and be really customized to your teammate. So listen, some information is for everybody, but usually in a 6-on-6 possession, there is specific information that an off-ball defender is giving to a guy who's in a decision-making role. And if I say, hey, watch this, the guy's going out there, blah, blah, blah. Jamie, the first 12 seconds of that thing could have been for anybody. Who's it for? Am I supposed to figure that out?
Right.
Or if the first thing I say is, Jamie, now everything that comes after that is very specific for Jamie, and he gets to react to it, and you use really evocative, colorful, specific language that is totally catered for him in his situation. And I always use the metaphor of, growing up, like if you're our age, your mom or dad would open the door and yell your name, and depending on the tone, whatever you were doing, you stopped and you waited for what was coming next. Is it dinner? Did I not clean my room? Did somebody eat all the Captain Crunch? Whatever it was, you waited for it because it was coming, and it was you stopped and froze, and you were prepared for the words that came next. And so that was a kind of an epiphany over the last year or two.
Yeah, really great stuff. Let's talk a little bit about recruiting and sort of you were saying, hey, you're still recruiting 20s.
Yep.
You are you've gotten great response from the 2021s, and first of all, how long do you see this recruiting process going? Because me, just as an outsider looking in, it seems like this class of 2021 might be the most underevaluated class in recent memory, just simply because nobody really got started looking at them in earnest until this summer. And then secondly, because there's so many kids out there, it's not like back 15 years ago when you could actually see everybody in the summer.
Right. Now
it's like almost impossible to really know. So give us your just overall thoughts on that, and specifically, how long do you see this process going?
I think the process goes right up to the last second of before signing day for the teams that have scholarships.
Right up through into November.
Right, goes right to the end. And so, because I'm a true believer, as one of the few guys who had children who went through this process, I think where young people and their parents want to go is the most important thing. And so they should be continuing to evaluate the rightness and the correctness of their decisions. And as coaches, our job is to find good people and good players. And it's not an another school, you're trying to find players and people to represent your university that have the credentials and the skills and the character and the characteristics that you think can help your program and can affect positively, everybody's experience on campus. And so, I don't think it's a sprint. I never felt it when I was in South Bend, and I don't feel it now. I'm fortunate to be representing a place like Harvard that's a dream and a wish school for a lot of athletes and students. And so, we don't have the ability to make decisions on people as early as others, but that's not going to stop us from continuing to evaluate them. And I don't feel like that's an ethical or moral issue. I think it's the right of the parents and the players to continue to think about what place makes the most sense for them. And so, a lot of the 21s don't have SATs and ACTs and things like that. And, there's not much we can do to make an evaluation on, and that's okay, because the right kind of player is going to continue to improve as an athlete, and the right kind of student and thinker is going to continue to challenge himself in the classroom and in his test taking, because his aspiration should be less about maybe a specific school. It should be more about my whole high school experience, which should be about learning and developing myself as a person and a player. And that doesn't stop in September of the start of his junior year. That's a thing that goes on, and you hope it goes on for the rest of his life, that love of learning and the ability and desire to improve. And so, for us, what do I think this all means? I think you're right. There wasn't a lot of viewing of this age group, and because it was a shorter, compact, I think there's going to be, people are going to make mistakes on trying to predict what 16-year-old can play, in one of the best leagues in college lacrosse. So I think we're going to be appropriately measured. We're going to be thorough. We're going to be about relationships with developing with players and parents and articulating all that Harvard can offer and the opportunity here. And that takes a long time. But that takes a long time at all these schools, not just Harvard. And so, but I think ultimately what parents and young people want for themselves is the most important thing. And I don't think if someone changes their mind or likes one school early and likes another school late, that's exactly what they should be doing. That's it. That investigation of what they want is the most critical thing, and it doesn't make us bad actors if we're continuing to do that. It doesn't make it a right or wrong thing. It's what parents and young people want that's the most important thing.
You look at like the NFL, and they've got all the resources. They're drafting guys that are 22 years old.
Yep.
And they get it wrong all the time. Even the good guys get it wrong. And so you just think about recruiting as such an inexact science anyways. Right. I mean, it's really, really hard. Sure. And then you got this whole class and you're trying to see everybody. What are the things you're looking for? Because I feel like a lot of times it's the intangibles that are the hardest things. How quickly can someone learn? What is their attitude for learning and working? What is their level of toughness or competitiveness? These are the things, because I think it's easier to see the skill or the size, the speed, right? And but any thoughts on how you do that?
I think we all sit in those chairs in the summer, and some have nicer chairs, some have the $10 chair that collapse under the weight. But
some leave their chairs.
Some leave their chairs because they can't make it to the next event because the fourth leg broke,
or because they got to get on a flight.
So, it's calling it a science is an offense to science, and calling it an art is an offense to art. And so there's a mixture of art and luck and fortunate timing and getting connected and falling in love with a player. But a lot of it is also belief that you communicate to the guys that you're evaluating, that you believe in their ability. And then the effort that all coaches put into character and communicating with their coaches and communicating with their secondary sport coaches and asking stories about how they came through some struggle or overcame a disappointment or an injury or a team loss or failure to make a play or things like that. So you got to do that homework, because if all you do it is based on sitting in that $10 chair and being moved by a guy playing in a team event or an individual event
for a half,
and you totally halo effect the thing. You see him make one play and you extrapolate that he can make 5 other plays because he's really athletic in that one play, is that, you can be wrong a lot. But, the thing you don't want to be wrong with is, the values of the family, the character and characteristics of that person, because they're going to be on your campus, whether they become a star or a starter or not. You better love everything about what they can bring to your team in a scenario where they don't become a star or a starter. That's a really critical thing. And the job of the coach is to continue to develop their players all through their 4 years on your team. And that's an important thing, because they'll appreciate that faith that you give them. They'll recognize the value that you're showing in them by coaching the 40th guy on your team the same way you coach the All-American or the All-Ivy player. And that the democratic approach in coaching that way lets your guys know that you respect them.
Yeah.
And that they're contributing, even though the contribution may not end up on the Saturday, they're contributing in some way. And the fact that you recognize that makes them feel good about their role on the team.
I heard a quote from a college coach being like, I don't want to recruit this defenseman, because like his stick is at his hip. And fair point, right? But at the same time, if you watch I've watched a lot of pro lacrosse. I coached in the MLL a couple years ago. There's tons of guys that are great players with their sticks in their hip, right? So there's this and it's not like but when they were in college, they didn't have their stick in their hip because they were taught to approachably poke, and they were taught, these habits and fundamentals. And so how do you bridge the gap between, I can teach this guy versus I want to have the finished product, and how do you figure that out?
Listen, if you're a recruiter, you're always hoping that you get struck by lightning, that you just watch and you're like, the soft music starts playing and the sky opens up and it's like, you see it and you notice it.
Kind of like in Happy Gilmore when he was in his happy place.
100%. And so but that rarely happens. And so if you go into this event thinking that it can happen quickly, that this is one play is going to evoke all these other emotions in you and the assumption of all these other skills, you're going to be disappointed a lot, or you're going to, make a lot of mistakes. And so, you have to have a diligence and a patience in that. But to your question it's really the question you have to ask yourself is that a habit that's ingrained or that won't break, and not punishing them too much for the one thing, like a negative halo effect. All right, that guy's in a terrible stance off ball. Yeah. I can't recruit him. Well, you got to teach that guy to be in a better stance, right?
It's tough. Yeah.
Right, and so that's where you go back to the conversations with all the different people that are influencers in his life, and questioning them, whether it's the teachers and guidance counselor and football coach. You want to try to get a quorum, a sense of understanding around, no, this guy's unbelievably coachable. We tell him to have to do something, he does it the next thing, and we never have to think about it.
Like Joe Montana.
Right. So
first time.
Right. Once the first time, only time. And so you have to ask those questions, but you don't want to punish too much. And I made those mistakes myself, that I got so dogmatic around, man, that guy's knees are locked, he's off ball on the crease, and he looks like he's waiting for the bus. That's not how you want to stand. But I also want to ask that question, maybe he hasn't been told not to do that. Maybe he's not getting, the right kind of coaching. Maybe he cares so much about guarding that he needs to be taught that off ball is just as important as guarding that guy. So you have to ask yourself, is that an unbreakable habit, or is that a workable, coachable fix?
Yeah.
And then, then you kind of, but that's really the central question.
And it's degrees too, right? Because sometimes it's like, all right, he's picking up point on a fast break and outside the box. You might just have to cross him off because, like he's obviously never been coached. I did a podcast with a coach recently, and he was like, I really like recruiting guys more from kind of like Philly, Long Island, Baltimore. I like to recruit defensemen from those areas because they're playing against better competition, and I feel like they're better coached and all that. And yet, I think there's some truth to that. It's fair. You maybe know a little bit more what you're getting, but so much of all of this is your ability to get better, right?
100%.
That's really what it is.
The geography. I look at our team now. We probably have kids from 13 to 15 states on our team, and I think that provincial mindset Yeah, listen, I think that could be, a false logic. Obviously, there's definitely a mentality around whether it's the club or playing against really good competition that if you play against really good competition, you're going to get better faster. I don't know if that's always true. I mean, if you're getting bad coaching and developing bad habits, then you're probably not going to get better. Now, you're playing with other really good players, which may mask some of your shortcomings, but I think the growth mindset, the mindset around improvement, the thinking about improvement as playing small group games, small-sided stuff, other sports, using video to improve, becoming a student of his own game, all that stuff. If you told me the choice was a guy from an established geography who's getting, just okay coaching, but he's playing against all the best players in practice and things like that, versus a guy who maybe has less of the high-end competition, but he's circulating all those things. I don't believe in the geography thing. I'm looking for players, and I don't really care where they're from. If they're from the Aleutian Islands and can come down here with some mittens and a parka and play, I'm down with that. I don't care, because for as many guys at the variety of places that I've coached that were from traditional areas, there were just as many and probably more from developing areas who probably had to experience less of the high-end competition and more of the combination of coaching. We had probably more high-end guys from that category than from the traditional areas.
What is if you were to think of like the play, you're watching a club game or a high school game and you see an off the ball play, like somebody anticipates an inside roll, they jump all over it and
Right.
and on a hammer slide of some kind, right? Slide that inside roll and stay on that double and communicate it. Is that like the kind of thing that just gets you fired up about that player's potential as being a smart player, or could that be like a false positive too?
No, I think an awareness to playing off ball, help defense is both. That's someone who's been taught that. Maybe he's bringing it from basketball or another sport, that they've totally embraced the concept of, when I'm off the ball, I got to be as diligent as I am on the ball. I can think about a couple of guys that I've coached where, ball came in off the end line, far in the corner. First pass gets thrown across X to the other hash, and that guy starts dodging, beats his guy, and I watch this guy sprint to the back pipe as the slide goes and blow up that guy. I mean, that's pride.
Was it Garrett Apple?
Could be. That's pride, and that's effort, and that's competitiveness, and a belief that my guy gave up the ball, I got to get on to my next role and responsibility. And that's character, that's coaching, that's competitiveness, that's having to do that because your coach expects it of you. It's what your team needs. Yeah, the intersection of things that if the guy didn't do it, maybe you wouldn't get penalized too much because you'd have to say to yourself, I need to teach that guy.
Right.
But if he's doing it already,
Yeah.
it means all of those things have intersected. Character, coaching, competitiveness, all came together in that moment at some club event, and it's November and it's 35 degrees and I'm sitting in a $10 chair and I see that,
And you got
that speaks to me.
Your Long Island tuxedo on?
I got jeans, jean jacket, and Chuck Taylor's on, Long Island three-piece suit. And so, that speaks to me 100%.
So do you notice every single time if guys are in a stance off the ball? When you're recruiting, are you noticing it? Like if someone's in a great stance, you're like, check.
And again,
check.
stance is just not a defense or an offensive thing, but the question is about defense is, after my whole thing about recruiting defensemen is after I've determined that this guy covers at some level that we like, I won't penalize him for getting beat. Like I've watched enough and I believe that this guy can guard at a really high level. Doesn't mean he doesn't give up a shot or doesn't give up an inside roll or guy doesn't get topside.
What does it mean?
Right? No, but once I've accepted that, then I move on. I just watch a guy off ball. I watch him move. I watch his stance. I watch how he gestures. I watch how he communicates.
Do you hear him?
I'm trying to hear him, sure. And so So you've accepted a level of coverability that obviously you want to see improve, and that you hope you improve when the guy comes to play for you. But all the rest of the time, I'm watching him play, be in the slide role, be in a support role, be in a collapse role. And because that tells you, you don't want to judge too harshly. Now we get back to, was he coached? Was he not coached? Right. Where's he from? What do I know about the coaching philosophy of the high school he's on or the club team he's on? So, but I think there's been enough of that, whether it's podcasts by you or guys, placing stuff on social media. Defensemen know off-ball defense really matters. So I've definitely noticed a marked improvement on the club and the high school level because it's being preached.
Yeah.
For sure. And so it shouldn't be that radical anymore.
And to a certain degree, I mean, if you're standing up with your knees locked, you just might get crossed off the list at that time. I mean, you got to have some clue, right? I mean, you can't have no clue.
Right.
If you're running out and approaching with your stick up in the air, it could be problematic.
Listen, I think that the club, these guys playing 25 to 30 games, I try not to judge too harshly. I had children who went through this process. Listen, you want crazy competitive guys, but you hear people at some of these end of summer events, Jamie wasn't playing that hard. I'm like, it's 99 degrees. This is his 34th game of the summer. I'm not going to judge that guy too harshly. I will grade, in an aggressive manner, a guy who's still doing that at the end of the summer. He gets bonus points, but this other guy doesn't get penalized too much in my mind.
I've actually got video on both of us looking like we're not playing that hard because Jerry decided to chase me down and put a little pressure on it. It was just, how did you describe it, like two old guys in a fight?
It looked like two fat guys, slugging it out in the ring with their boxer shorts pulled over their belly buttons. So yeah, you might have to post that video because it looked like
you did. Yeah, there was the one where you put a little pressure on, and I just kind of ran away very slowly. There was the one where you went right over my head on the goal line and got bailed out by a short stick who had just been on.
They
knew that's the Denver defense, by the way, from the mid 2000s.
Jamie was dangling a piece of bacon off the back of his stick, and I went for it and didn't get it. That was great. Lake Placid.
Yeah.
Old guys playing lacrosse, which
Brown
is
State
hysterical.
Won the ship.
Yeah, you had a face-off guy who was under 45. Just saying.
Allegedly,
no. He's posting on Instagram, "Happy birthday." He's taking happy birthday wishes
on Facebook.
On true story. True story.
All right,
it's true story.
Well, we
got our ass kicked, so there's no shock there.
You guys look good. You had the good uniforms though.
We did.
So, tomorrow night we are going to see one of Jerry's old neighbors, Billy Joel, at Fenway Park. What when you think of Only the Good Die Young, what does it make you remember?
Oh my God! And this is maybe I'm going to plant question, and so I'm trying to think. When I was in 8th grade, which was like 1977.
All right.
I can't remember whether it was The Stranger that came out, or was it The Stranger that came out?
I think so, yeah.
So whatever his big album at that time, and Scenes from an Italian Restaurant.
That was right around. That was
77, 78.
That was Hicksville.
So I was home, and we'd go over, class St. Bernard's would get out, and the kids would go over and hang out, listen to that album, and that was a big deal. I could remember it because part of it was a pride of a guy who's from your area on Long Island.
I mean, he made it.
He totally made it, and that album was.
And then he married Christy Brinkley.
And listen, you don't see that happening all the time in Nassau County. So but that album coming out was a real seminal moment. 8th grade, people meeting. Parents are still at work. 8th graders kind of hanging out.
Up to no good, most likely. In Levittown.
We were a good Catholic school, boys and girls, so nothing too nothing too nefarious. But it's that album. I can see that get together. I can see the house that we were at in our town, and there might have been an 8-track or a cassette. The sound of the cassette going in and the clicking of that going in, and a little bit of a boom box.
Was it right down the street from Mother Wax House?
It was not. It was not in the. Levittown is broken up by sections, and I think we were in the rock section.
The rock?
So, the rock section, yes. Or the planet section.
Well, that's tomorrow night, Fenway Park. We're headed to the Billy Joel concert with our boy Dave Jenkins.
Mother Whack.
There he is, Mother Whack. What's up? Anyways, so that'll be a lot of fun. What do you got on the schedule this year, by the way? You guys got, have you finished the 2020 schedule? You know you're playing out of conference stuff? What do you got?
We got, it's still being worked on, so I don't want to divulge that too much as far as, but, everybody knows that we've locked that in. We just have to do the paperwork through the university. But in the fall, we are playing the Israeli national team on October 4th, Friday night.
Coach Byrne?
Here. Coach Bergman, our volunteer, will be a half on our sideline and a half with the Israeli national team. I told him, be careful. You better shut these guys out, or else you're going to hear a lot about the goals that are going in.
I think I'd shoot leaders on Coach Byrne.
So we got the Israeli national team under the lights here on Jordan Field at Harvard, and then we are playing Vermont and Manhattan up in Burlington. We're going to do a little career development, team development stuff up on Lake Champlain the day before. And then we are playing our alumni on October 26th here in Cambridge, which I guess was a pretty competitive match last year, which is exactly what we want. And so we do a banquet and career development stuff in Boston.
Fastest man in the PLL?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
It's kind of strange going to a new program, though, in the sense that, like, the rivalries don't resonate, when you first get there.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I just remember having done that a few times. I'm sure you have too. And it's just like they build over the course of time, but that's kind of your advantage because it's kind of like, hey, look, I don't really care who we're playing right now. We just got to play our game.
Right.
Whereas everyone starts getting all up. I remember getting to Denver and everyone was like talking about Air Force. I was like, I really don't care about Air Force. Like, I just care about that.
Yeah.
But what is it like for you to come into a new situation? Are you trying to get everybody to just not worry about the way they used to think about things and just start thinking about a new way of looking at this program and games and everything?
Well, I think for any coach at any level, this is the only time this team is going to be together. Whatever happened last year is relevant, from the perspective of taking the lessons from that. But 25% of that team is gone. So, you have a new 25%. The ethos of that team and the results of that team they're gone. You want to take the lessons from that for sure. And this team only has August till next May to be together. So focusing on that kind of window of time, not to kind of get guys panicked or stressed about it, but this team in this iteration with these guys will only be here for those, 9 months, 10 months. And so having an appreciation and a humility around that becomes really important because now every day matters, every rep matters, the kind of person you are on the athletic side of the river here at Harvard, and then the kind of person you are on the residential academic side, all that stuff matters because you're only going to cross that bridge over the Charles River. Every time you do it, that's one less time and one more time closer to your end. So what are you going to do today? What are you going to do in this drill? What are you going to do in this class? What are you going to do in your relationship with your teammates and your friends all around campus and your family? So just having an appreciation and focus for that moment, because this team's moment in time is only those 9 months. And so, the rivalries that exist in our league are hundreds of years old. There'll be plenty of time to talk about that, but even, I don't think there's a team in the country, it's not like the movies where there's the rousing speech and the coach is talking about, we didn't do this last year and this team did that to us last year. There's no time for hate and anger around that. It's all about the love of the process and getting better, and the love in the room and the commitment to getting better for this team in this moment, in this window of time.
Well, it's gonna be fun to watch, and I'm staying over at the Charles Hotel for a couple nights here, and I walked across the river. Will be one last time I'll get to do that, I'm sure. But it is worth the walk. I mean, if you've never checked out this campus, it's got this kind of incredible combination of. You feel like you're on a campus, but you're also in a city, and it's really neat. So, Jerry, awesome spending time with you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Talking lacrosse. Fired up to talk a little more two-man game with you. I gave him my new concept on two-man game. I think he bought in a little bit.
I did, man.
Yeah.
I did. Yeah, it's always great. Jamie does a great job. His passion for the sport is, I can't think of anybody who thinks about the X's and O's in teaching the elements of offense and the overall game more than you. And, I think you've helped spawn, whether you agree with your philosophies or not, I think you've spawned, I would say imitators, because imitation is the highest form of flattery, but the conversation and the volume of people who are thinking deeply about teaching this game, that's elevating the game. So thank you.
Thanks, buddy. Everybody, thanks for tuning in, and peace.
Bye. I love you, baby Doc Byrne.
Oh, she's on. Nice.
I love you.
See
Bye,
ya.
honey.
Later.